we have Councilman Wong. Medford Township Council Budget Workshop meetings called to order. Public meeting statement. Notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the agenda on the bulletin board at the municipal building and on the township website. Filing a copy of the agenda in the office of the township clerk at the municipal building, forwarding a copy of the agenda to the central record in Burlington County Times, forwarding written notice to each person who requested copies of the regular meeting schedule. All of the above posting, filing, and mailing have taken place on the 16th of February, 2012. All rise for the flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Beanstalk?
Here.
Mr. Buolny?
Here.
Mr. Watson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Checkeye?
Here.
Mayor Pace?
Here. For the public's edification, Councilman Buolny is in Colorado and he's joining us via telephone. Before we get into the budget discussion, this morning's meeting is a workshop. It's a workshop to allow the governing body to communicate with the manager and chief financial officer in regards to the preliminary budget that was provided at the last council meeting. During the course of this meeting, public comments are going to be limited at the end of the meeting to 5 minutes per speaker. It's important that we be able to go through this process without interruption. So before we start, I'm going to ask if there's any comment or suggestion that the public would like to make, that you also have the opportunity to do so now. So if there's anybody that has a comment or a question before we start, please, by all means. Anyone? Mr. Clancy.
Show me over there.
Yeah, up here, please.
Needs to be recorded.
State your name and address for the record.
Chaz Clancy, 16 Tyrone. A couple of questions that I had were, one, besides the fact that you decided to, or considering cutting individuals, raising taxes, and cutting out departments, has anyone looked into or come up with any type of an idea to actually produce some income for the township? You know, thinking outside the box. And number two, with regard to the trash, my question was, did anyone possibly think of privatization, which may include actually taking the equipment that we have now, making a deal with the person who would purchase or who would be the privatization person, selling our equipment, and also giving them the caveat they have to hire the employees that we have here. That being possible, maybe the selling of the equipment could possibly give the town a year's, if you want to, abatement between now and then, where you wouldn't have to take away the trash and other items attributed to it. That would give us the opportunity, at least a year, to think about how we can reduce that income rather than just strictly cut it out of the budget. Those are the only two questions I had, or comments, whatever you say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Is Mr. Schultz here?
Yes, sir.
My name is James Dixon from Mimosa Lakes.
Hi, Mr.
Wayne Local Lead Corp. Thank you for all your help you've given me over the last week.
Sure.
I have some comments and some questions. I've done a considerable amount of research on comparing Easham's budget to Medford Township budget for 2011. Things that popped out at me were our debt is way too high for our township. We have about the same amount of debt service as Eastham Township, which has a much larger base in terms of population and owner property. while we can't do much with the debt itself, I'm wondering whether it can be restructured for a longer period of time to help reduce the amortization of the principal down to one of their bonds goes out for 15 years, I think all ours are at least 10 years or less. The other thing that came out was the property taxes. Our asset, the reserve, the delinquent property tax receivable is way too high compared to Medford Township. I'm wondering whether anything can be done to help speed up the payment. Our town, based on the 2010 census tract, the income is significantly higher than Eastern Township. They seem to pay their taxes a lot better than we do. Other areas that came out, what I did is a comparison of, well, the other thing is our taxes are way too low. Landfill taxes are very high, we're paying a lot of money, but if you look at the percentages which were in your plan, as to the comparison of our taxes versus the budget, we're way too low. That was also determined from my research of Eastern versus Medford Township. To get us up equal to them, we at least need another $1.2 million in additional taxes to bring them up to at least something close to what Eastern Township is paying. In doing that, what I recommend to management and the council is, I attended last year's meetings on increasing the taxes. To me, it was a very poor presentation because it focused entirely on the revenue side and did not bring out what was causing the problem in Medford Township, which is basically we borrow, we've used that to plug the shortfalls in the budgets in past years. We've done one-time audits. That needs to be brought up as a selling point to help increase our taxes. The other thing that a lot of people don't understand is the municipal budget, as comparison to your entire tax payment, is only 12 to 13% of the total taxes that you're paying. A lot of people don't understand that. When they read that you're going to increase taxes 3%, they were saying, oh man, 3% on the $10,000 that I'm paying, that's going to be $3,000. They don't realize Medford Township's taxes is only I pay about $1,200. Do I want to see a huge tax increase? No. The other thing that really needs to be brought up is, since 2005, prior administrations didn't raise taxes 5 years. If they had raised it $25 a year over this year, we wouldn't be talking such a large increase this year. A lot of the deficit would have always been cut. And I need to present this. I know you guys are in a tough situation taking over. The other items that were very interesting to me is police salaries look pretty good compared to Eastern Township. With the additional cut this year, actually, that we're going to be below the percentage that I would have figured that we would have had for police. The things that I would ask you to look into are sanitation, recreation, and parks. Now, I'm comparing it 2011 versus budget in Eastern Township versus Medford Township, and we were high. The cuts that were made to those departments, and I wish some of that could be brought back, because I think having a healthy program for kids and older citizens like me, the recreation is very important. I still think there might be some savings if they could be realized to bring it more into line with what Eastern Township has. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Terry.
So early for this, you know, right? My brain isn't even awake. Terry Palmer, Allen Avenue. Have you considered even going to the state and asking for like a low interest loan to help us out here?
We've considered transition aid. We have applied for it.
Well, we haven't applied. Terry, rather than go back and forth, okay, which is traditionally what happens.
Right.
We're, in a word, yes, we've considered that, yes.
Well, I'm just thinking, if we do get a low interest loan for $5 million from the state, and you just have to be aggressive, aggressive. Don't let them go. I mean, they help Camden, they help Willingboro, they help everybody else. Come up here, we need help. You know, you gotta swallow your pride and we gotta plug away and get it. Once we get back up on our feet a little bit with the 5 million, then you have to start thinking about rateables. Not housing, rateables. We have property that we just keep putting developments on. We need, they shot it down with Home Depot. Home Depot would have been a wonderful thing. All the rateables they were going to bring in at Medford Crossings, but it wasn't going to be Medford Crossings back then. Years ago, Randy, I gave you the plans from Friedman Cohen. You saw that. It was a great plan. Now, be aggressive because you'll have the ball in your court. You're not the underdog now. You're not digging your way out of a hole because we have the no interest loan. So now you can call the shots. We need the rateables to build it the way we want it, not the way you want it. This is what we want. This is what we need. And you have to just be aggressive and go after it and get those rateables into this town. Main Street, dead. Bring businesses in there, although people have been saying that for years. You know, bring businesses and not antique shops because they're just going to go under in 5 months. You can't make it so difficult in this town for people to bring their businesses into this town, which is what has happened over prior to the past years. Now, the sore spot here for me, I fought it since the day they brought it up years ago. The paid fire guys. I'm sorry, nobody wants to hear this. Chris, no, you don't want to hear this. But we have plenty of volunteers. Now, my question is, the amount of money that we're paying for the paid guys, okay, we don't need them, honestly, because the volunteers will come back. If you eliminate them, I understand, I get that we need coverage during the day. So right now, we can't afford those paid guys. We cannot afford them. So you offer $15 an hour to a few guys. It's like a job, no benefits, part-time, to cover the day hours. No weekends, no nights, because the volunteers cover that. $15 an hour for a couple guys to work part-time shifts throughout the daytime. That would save us a huge amount of money. Now, I like the fire guys. I'm friends with them. I feel bad for anybody who loses a job. I'm not saying, but I just don't think that this township ever really needed it. We had plenty of coverage. And I think that there's a way right now, maybe when we get back up on our feet, we can bring paid guys back. But right now, we can't afford them. We cannot, not when there's another way. Offer them $15 an hour, cover them 3, 4, 5 guys during the day, 4-hour shifts. $15, you know, do the math. It'll save a lot of money. Yes. What do I have, 5 minutes?
You're getting there.
Well, you know,
No, keep
have you
going,
thought
Jerry.
about furloughs? Now, we're barely out of employees. I get that. We don't have too many employees left, so how much difference would a furlough make? However, it's an idea. Nickels and dimes add up. So if everybody takes 1 day a week off without pay, that will add up. Yes? No?
I don't want to jump in yet.
Well,
I'll
yeah,
go
we'll
over
get
all
to it.
these.
We have it written down. And yes, Terry, up until this point, there's nothing you've said that you know hasn't been thought of, written down, and is being addressed.
Now, what about NYAA? Sore spot for me. What, I mean, we can't pay for anything. If you look, 4,700 kids participate in NYAA sports. Now, look, I played for LYA when I was little. I coached softball for LYAA. I was very involved with it. But there comes a time, it was all volunteer. We even had to pay, the sponsors paid for our uniforms. So my question is, and has always been, what are they doing with all that money? And why did we ever start helping them out and fork the money out and letting them use our fields? They want to use our fields, they need to pay rent. They need to pay to use those fields because it's an organization and the taxpayers are paying for the lighting and everything else, and it's ridiculous. We were paying for the maintenance, It's ridiculous. They are loaded.
Okay, let's brief, bright, and relevant. We can beat all the dead horses all day, but brief, bright, and relevant. What else?
Okay. Water sewer. How's our surplus in there? $6 million? Do we have any surplus in there?
We're waiting for the annual financial statement to be concluded. We'll know in about a week exactly what we have.
Because any time is an emergency, this would be it to tap into that surplus. That's what it's for, and that's.
Well, that's not what the surplus
Well,
is for, but I
we could use it in an
understand what you're
emergency.
saying. Understand.
It's there for us in an emergency.
Right, and only 60% of the people pay that.
Well, look how high the school taxes are,
Okay,
and
hold on,
seniors
hold
don't
on,
have kids in the
hold on,
schools. So
hold on.
what are you telling me, Frank?
Brief, bright, and relevant. Okay. Water and sewer emergencies. Got it. Understand.
How about just trying to eliminate all of, now this, like again, nickel dime, all the lights left on from the township. Here, I'm talking about Gill Road. I don't know who is out there using that field. I live right there. I see it every night. That light is blowing that field up until 11:30. And it's ridiculous. I haven't been past the Hartford crossings, but I'm looking at, it sounds tedious, it sounds ridiculous.
Actually,
Our lighting
Go ahead.
bill is, our lighting bill is up there. Oh, God, I'm a mess. That's, that's good for now. Let me read over my slop here, and I'll probably have something at the end of it.
that's fine, Gary. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Perfectly. Anyone else?
Well, that's what it was.
Pete Puzo, 8 Town Report. Just was talking with Gina the other night, and like I said, I'm a practical guy. I don't agree with taking water money to spend somewhere else. That's not what it's for. But the other two gentlemen talked about, think outside the box, right? Debt service is our biggest thing. I have no money, but if you come back to me and say we're thinking outside the box, I'll write a $5,000 check to get rid of debt service, take it off my taxes for the next 5 years. Come to us with something that we want to work with you guys. This is what's killing us. We got a way to do it. I'll send you, tax money, take it off myself for the next 5 years. Maybe we can get rid of that debt service. Maybe we got enough people here that are practical that we get rid of that debt service, and then our taxes aren't so bad. We got to do something. So. Start trying to, I know you're trying to work with it, but, come outside the box and let's find a way to work with it. Maybe that's what you do with businesses in town. Collect $5,000 from them, take it off the bill for the next 5 years, get rid of debt service. Something. All right? Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. What I want to do now is close the public portion. If you don't have anything else to add. And then, once I close the public portion, I'm going to briefly address some of the things that have been brought up. And quite frankly, I don't think there's anything that's been mentioned that, again, like I said, hasn't been thought about, discussed, sent via email, etc.
Motion to close the public portion.
Second.
Mr. Bloom's motion. I have a second from Deputy Mayor Checkeye. All in favor of closing the public portions? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Just real quick, in regards to ideas for income, the township draws its income from property taxes, and some of it from the state, obviously. The income from the state is down, we all know that. Obviously, ratables for Medford Township, commercial ratables increase the tax base. The programs and methods by which business gets built, developed in Medford is something that happens over time. Long before any of us got elected to this governing body, things were done that made that process a little restrictive. Okay, maybe little is the wrong word, a lot restrictive. We don't have commercial ratables. We are not Evesham. We are absolutely not Evesham. To make a comparison with any other township, it has to be an apples to apples comparison. Okay, we don't have the commercial ratables that the townships that surround us do. We are looking at going in a different direction. 2 members of the governing body are on the planning board. The direction that the planning board has gotten over the course of the past 10 years, and from where I sit, is sketchy. I don't have that information. I don't have anyone on the planning board telling me this is the direction we've been going and this is why. I can look at the master plan and tell you that since 1966, little has changed, and little effort's been made to change it, because people don't want Medford to be Evesham. They don't want commercial ratables here, so it all falls on the taxpayers, the individual property owners, and the few businesses that we do have. It's a difficult process. That revenue stream is going to be a long time coming. It's not going to fix it today or this year. We're not going to fix it this year using that revenue stream. Next year, different story. One of the things that impacts that is sewer capacity. It's a problem. We are reaching the point where, there is no more sewer capacity. We can't get commercial and residential development in Medford because there's no sewer capacity, for them to tap into. A lot of that is tied up in Medford crossings. We're all aware of that. That's a big thing. We're not going to borrowing money to pay your debt, borrowing money to pay your bills is not what's going to fix what's broken in Medford. That train left the station. We've been doing that for years, and we can't do it any longer. That's not the way to fix it. And again, that's my perception, and I think most of the governing body will agree with me, and if they don't, I welcome you to indicate that now. Beyond that, the rest of it, it's all being looked at. That's why we're here today. Or part of the reason we're here today. I don't want the public to think that decisions are being made for expediency's sake. They're not. We're very deliberative about this process. And while every individual's understanding may, go to a certain point, I will tell you, without fear of contradiction, we have, as it's been stated before, a financial crisis. We're $5.7 million roughly in the hole. We can't pay a quarter of the bills that we have for 1 year. And if anybody that, take $1 out of your pocket, rip it into 4 individual pieces, throw one away, that's all you've got. That's all you've got. So, pay your bills with what you have. Something's not going to get paid. Something's going to get cut. And the state transitional aid program isn't going to fix Medford Township's problems. Even if we met all the requirements, we're going to end up turning over all the decision-making to the state. Do you think it's going to take a long time to get ratables now? You turn all those decisions over to the state, and it's going to be 2 or 3 times as long to bring in that commercial revenue stream. So again, all these things are being discussed. Any other comments?
Yeah, just to follow up with what the gentleman said about our taxes being too low, and I've actually, I went to a seminar a couple of weeks ago given by our auditing firm to go over how municipal budgets are structured and built. And one of the things that they gave me in this book, they gave me a breakdown of taxes and how they break out at the county level for Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester County. And I think these are based on 2010 numbers because they were the most recent numbers available. And for Burlington County, countywide, there's $962 million in real estate taxes collected. Now, we collect probably close to $100 million for Medford. It's got to be close to that number.
It's high.
Just Medford collects basically 10% of what the county as a whole collects for our rate base, for us. And the way it breaks out by category, on average in Burlington County, 64.3% goes to the schools of that tax dollars at countywide level on average. 17% goes to the municipality to run the government, collect your trash, pick up your leaves.
12.
What's that?
No, he's talking
No,
county.
I'm talking countywide. Countywide.
Right.
And at the county collects 18.6%. So that all adds up to 100%, obviously. In Medford, we get 11 cents at every dollar. So we get 11% of the money versus the 17% at the countywide level. So you're right. We don't collect enough taxes at the local level to provide the level of services that every other jurisdiction in our county collects. And this is, if you look at the other counties as well, if you look at Gloucester and you look at Camden, the numbers are the same. You know, we're low on municipal services. Now, our school district collects 72 cents versus the 64 countywide. So they're high. They're taking 8 cents. Essentially, they're taking the money, the 8 cents, that maybe should be shifted over to the municipality to provide services. But again, percentages are a funny thing. We can make them basically say whatever we want. So if we raise taxes, yes, we would collect, we would have a higher percentage, and the school district's piece would go down, and that's all that would happen. But as it stands now, they're high, we're low. The county is right where we should be. We pay 17 cents of every dollar in our taxes we collect to the county. They're at 18.6 countywide, so they're right about there. So you can see where the money's shifted, as it were, over time, and that's not a function of, I'm not sitting here saying, well, the school district's been raising, they've been raising your taxes every year, which is what we should have been doing too. We should have been doing it in tandem, right along with them, and we'd be right at these averages. But we didn't do that here. We kept taxes flat. We used one-time revenue sources to fund the budget, and we're out of those one-time revenue sources now, and we don't have any more. And our debt's high, and we can't fund it that way. And it should have never been funded that way, to be quite honest with you. That's not the way you pay your bills. You don't go to the bank and borrow money to pay your grocery bill every week. You don't do that. It just doesn't work that way. And that's essentially what we were doing. We were going to the bank to borrow money, using one-time revenue sources to pay our grocery bill every week and to keep the lights on. And that's just, you can't do things that way. So, I just wanted to put that information out there. You are correct. I mean, percentage-wise, we're too low. And, you know, the chickens have come home to roost, as it were, now, and we got to do something about it. We got to fix it. We got to balance the budget, and whatever painful measures have to be taken to do that, to establish a new baseline, so that we can move forward and build from there. That's what we have to do. Essentially, we have to start over. And that's where we are at this point. So I just wanted to put that in, and you are correct. We have not been collecting what we should have been collecting to fund the type of services that we've all become accustomed to over time. And I've lived in this town 20 years, and yes, I mean, we had all those services when I moved here. It's one of the reasons I moved here. It's the reasons we all move here, because of the schools, because of the services that were provided. And things just got out of control, and that's what happened. But now we've got to fix that. and put things back on the right path. Now, with regard to your comment on the sewer, I just wanted to say that, yeah, there's probably a surplus in there because, quite frankly, we're collecting a lot of money for water and
I
sewer.
think.
Bills went up dramatically in the last 2 years. But only 60% of the people in town pay that money. And it's my view personally, it's wrong to fund 100% of the budget off 60% of the people. Now, with that in mind, if there's a surplus in there, you know, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to get public input. But we're in a unprecedented situation here, and we may have to use some of that money in order to just get things balanced for the year. But I don't want to use it all. Quite frankly, I'd like to return that money to the ratepayers, and I want to lower those rates. That's a goal to do that because they're too high. If we're generating a surplus in there, then they're too high. They need to come down so that we don't generate. Well, you have to generate a certain amount of surplus to capital improvement projects and whatnot, but they're beyond. I think they're beyond our needs now. At least that's the indication. They're beyond. We're collecting beyond what our needs are for the sewer. So, you know, again, it's my view that those rates have to come down eventually.
And before I turn it over to the manager for his comment, there are a lot of things that are being done that are beyond the municipality's control. Water being a perfect example. We're mandated by the state to buy water from New Jersey American Water. Now, we have our own water system, okay? We pump it out of the ground using wells, okay? We treat it, it goes out to all the homes. We're leaving water in the ground. We're buying water from New Jersey American Water, and it's costing us almost $500,000 a year by state regulation. In other words, a group of people got together and said, gee, you know, the aquifer's going to run dry and we're all going to die of dehydration, so we need to pass legislation that doesn't allow that to happen. There's a finite amount of water on this planet. It hasn't changed since mankind has been here, okay? They're pumping it out of the Delaware, they're taking it out of the Delaware and selling it to us because our state legislature said that's what we needed to do because a group of people said we're all going to die of dehydration. Honestly, and having only lived 50 years, I've got sense enough to know that this doesn't make sense. It simply does not make sense. What do we do as a township? Well, as a governing body, there's little we can do. We have a contract, that contract's for 15 years. Can I break that contract? No, because there's a state regulation that says I have to do this. What can we do as a municipality, as a group, as a bunch of homeowners that, you know, have a financial crisis? We can write a letter to the legislature saying, change that law, fix it, it's broken, you're killing us. You're making us spend money we don't need to spend. Now, I can tell you that the company that we're paying is the largest provider of water in the entire country. I can tell you that they're lining the pockets of politicians. You want to get it fixed, take control of it. All of you are sitting in this room on a Saturday morning, and you're here for a reason. Don't let it die today. Take the next step. Write that letter. Get involved. Get yourself educated. That's the only way we're going to fix it, or one of the ways we're going to fix it. That's a perfect example of why we're in the condition we're in. Chris, if you want to address...
Well, I'd like to at least kind of bring everybody up to speed with some of the items and then answer some of the questions. And then, like, if there are certain milestone dates the township is required to try to meet. For example, we need to have an introduced budget. The state has set February 29th or the meeting shortly thereafter. They do give us some flexibility. So right now, and not all municipalities meet these dates. Last year, we clearly didn't meet the date, but the target date right now for an introduced budget would be our March 6th meeting, probably, if if we were to try to work towards that. The adoption date is April 30th. The referendum date, if the community is to have a referendum, is April. There are other milestones. Today, there's a resolution that if we're going to consider a referendum, the council has to pass a resolution so that we can get notice out on the mail-in ballots. It doesn't mean we're going to have a referendum. It doesn't mean we're setting a question or setting the amount. It's more like an intent. We can always withdraw it, but if that resolution is simply to put the wheels in motion, that we can go that direction if we choose. February 29th is also the date for the application for transitional aid. If you want my opinion, and the mayor and I attended a transitional aid meeting, I believe it's a one-time revenue and we lose control to the state for 2 years. It's a 2-year window, the rest of this year and all of next year. Every decision has to go to them to sign off on. I also believe we would not qualify. One of the conditions is the town, through its policy, the policy decisions should not be the reason you come to the state for aid. The state is trying to push towns away from even coming to them. In fact, they're extending it to other things we're legally allowed to do. For example, the reevaluation, we're allowed to spread that payment over 5 years because it's typically a large number. There are other deferred processes, and the state's now going to require similar of towns that use those options to give control to the state. So we could go through the exercise, but at the end of the day, I don't believe we would even qualify. And whether they would give us $5 million, I don't know. They shrunk the amount of money they're giving out, and most of the communities there were all major cities: the Camdens, the Patterson,
Trenton, Newark, Patterson, all the same.
So I don't know. That's a council decision. The referendum, as I said, today would be the notice of availability resolution. March 21st, we would have to submit a narrative to the Division of Local Government Services of our narrative. March 30th, if we're going to go forward, we have to pass an authorizing resolution approving the referendum question and the amount and file it to the clerk's office by close of that date. And then again on April 5th, that would be the last day to publish the advertisement for the budget with the April 17th referendum date. Why I bring that up is because when I was preparing my budget, one of the things I used as a savings barometer, so to speak, was the quarter, April 1st, to achieve savings and cuts to the budget. Not knowing when the state was going to set the referendum, that causes a problem should we continue forward with the idea that trash service would be eliminated, because I would not want residents to hire a private hauler in the open market and get into a quarterly billing agreement yearly, and then 2 weeks later we have a referendum and the community maybe this time votes yes, and then we're going to bring trash back. So we have this 595,000 gap still that we're trying to bring down, and we found some additional dollars. It's not a lot of money, but we're trying to close that gap. And even if we eliminated fire, that would close the gap. It wouldn't restore everything else I've already recommended. So we're looking at those things. One of my concerns is, can we push sanitation to a May 1st issue? Should council and the community decide to go to referendum? That way there's no implementation problem with the date of the referendum. So that's something just to bring up today. I don't have anything else on transitional aid. Mayor, do you? You were at the orientation.
Again, the idea of turning over control of Medford Township for a period of 2 years will significantly impact any decisions the governing body makes in regards to bringing in ratables to the township. And we simply can't wait another 2 years, to get that process started. And my recommendation to the council is that we abandon any consideration for transitional aid.
I've read through the materials and I've talked to people, and I completely agree with that. I agree with Mr. Schultz. I don't think we would qualify. I think the crisis we're facing was brought about because of decisions that were made in the past. We have the ability qualify. I don't think it would be financial aid or transitional aid. It would solve our problems. It would simply defer it, and that's what we've done in the past. And I agree that we should abandon transitional aid and move forward with crafting a budget that can help solve our problem.
I can't agree more. I mean, I looked at the rules on transitional aid. I just don't believe we qualify. The control issue, while I don't like it, I mean, if it was necessary to fix things, I think I would move forward, but I just don't think that based on the requirements of the law and the regulations put out, that we could meet the requirements and even get past that hurdle. So I don't see the point in moving forward with it.
One other thing, I know Terry had brought up the idea of a low interest loan, and I was at a meeting, Mr. Watson and I were at a meeting a few weeks ago where the state talked about aid that they would provide. Said that the general aid is likely to be flat this year. The only other aid that the state would be offering would be transitional aid, and they made it, the Department of Community Affairs made it absolutely clear that there are no other avenues available to municipalities. Unfortunately, the state is almost in a worse position than we are. They're going to underfund their pension plan by $3 billion this year. And they made it absolutely clear that there just is no money in the pot there other than transitional aid. In the past, there were other programs, there were discretionary funds, and those funds just aren't available now. So unfortunately, transitional aid is our only shot at it, and I don't think it works for us.
Which goes back to what I was saying about contacting our legislators as a community, because we can meet with the county and state representatives and ask for them to consider some relief in the statutory requirements that come down from that level. But they in turn have to go back to their entire governing body, and it gets a lot bigger at that point. So even those solutions, are something that's going to take time. We're probably going to get, we probably have a better chance of getting that relief than, like you said, any financial relief, because they don't have the money either.
And that's something that we should look into organizing. And whether we do it through volunteers, form a committee, but I think that is going to take an effort. And it's going to take an effort of more than just the governing body. And that's something I think down the road for future years, we should start now, but we should consider trying to organize an effort to get our legislators involved to make some of these changes that would impact us.
And it has to be a wise effort. You can't go at it from the perspective of the Occupy Wall Street movement. It doesn't work that way. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. We're going to have a better impact. Transitional aid.
Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, go ahead. Transitional aid. You're going to, any thoughts?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Not sure if that's right.
Councilman Boney, can you hear me? Maybe you can't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just wanted to make a comment. Peter was there now?
Yes.
Okay, the comment that I keep hearing, when we're talking about the fact that we don't qualify for transitional aid, and I agree, are we letting the audience know exactly why? The school bus is from, essentially, the state is saying, you put yourself in this situation, we're not going to bail you out. And, I think we need to be very clear with the taxpayers that they understand the position that the state has on a township like ours is, how could you possibly put yourself in this situation? We defer so much money from our schools that it defies common sense. And even when the state of New Jersey tells you that, I think it should be emphasized that much more. Now, we got here, and from my perspective, the solutions that we need to apply to get us out of our create structure that makes now and that we brought up the idea of voting to convert the taxpayers to potentially have something on referendum. I'm willing to consider that, but from my perspective, I really don't want to raise taxes to address the problem. I want to deal with the structure that got us here but Medford Township doesn't belong to me or you or anyone on the council. If the community continues to voice, the concerns that, no, we want to pay higher tax, we'll let that aside. But what I don't want to do is put something on the agenda or put something out for referendum, spend the money on the electric, it won't work. So, I'm hoping that we're going to continue to emphasize, we put ourselves in this situation. We're all responsible for this by virtue of the people that we allow to, give us this sort of vision of Medford that everything taxed good. Look, we can just hire anyone we want, we can incur all the debt we want, and we don't have to raise taxes. Well, guess what? It was all an illusion, and here we are. And from that, I think needs to be very clear to those people who live here that we curse up here.
All right, Councilman Bowling,
It's not a magic bullet to get it out.
I will read directly from the local finance notice in regards to the meeting that we had. This was a point that the Director of Community Affairs made as it relates directly to Medford. Local Finance Board Notice 2011-39 reads in part, the municipality must demonstrate severe fiscal distress that will result in a constrained ability to raise sufficient revenues to meet budgetary requirements. If such fiscal distress was created by the municipality, i.e., deliberately deferring costs, issuing debt with balloon payments, or imprudently using one-time revenue sources without taking steps to plan for the future loss of the revenue, i.e. raising taxes, the applicant's chance of success will be diminished substantially. When the director got done reading that statement, he pointed directly to Medford Township and called the township out by name. Again, you're right, we're simply not going to get approved for transitional aid. There's no point in seeking it. We can't make the argument that we qualify. We are in severe fiscal distress, but beyond that, we can't make the argument. Anything else on transitional aid?
I agree with what my colleagues have said, and I don't think, in spite of us, whether we qualify or not, I don't really think it's a great idea. These one-time revenue sources are what got us into the problem we're in, and this is just going to delay the problem until next year. And we have to face the situation that we have, the problem head on, make some tough decisions, and get our town back on track.
Just one thing, just so everybody knows, because again, this is a concept that some people know about, other people don't. The school deferral of the taxes for the school district collects or runs on a fiscal year, July 1st to June 30. Township runs on a calendar year, 1/1 to 12/31. So we start collecting taxes in January for the school district's budget, which starts in July. So that's half a year. And we collect $43, $44, $45 million for the school district. What we're allowed to do by state law is we're allowed to defer that payment on that first 50%, that's $22, $23 million, one time to get up to that total $23 million. You're allowed to defer the payment of that. So in other words, we can spend that money. The township was allowed to spend that money, that first 6 months of money they collected, because they don't have to start paying the school district till July, and we collect another payment in August, and we can fund them through that. So we're allowed to defer essentially $23, $24 million one time. Once you get up to it, you're done. And we did that. We funded our budget through deferring those taxes over a course of years, over 4 or 5 years. They chewed up in some years $6 or $7 million a year of that school deferral they used to fund the services that the township provides, which in my view is just beyond negligent. I think it's reckless to fund a budget that way. That was a third of the budget they were funding through one-time revenue sources. It was reckless. It should have never been allowed to happen. That money, that school deferral is to be used for emergencies. Instead of coming to you in a year and saying, I need to raise your rate 2 cents, I need $400,000, I use a school deferral. Now, if I need, again, when you're planning for the future and you're saying, well, look, we got to look out 5 years and determine costs are going to increase, pensions are going to increase, so on and so forth, we need to start raising taxes a little bit. Yeah, you need to raise them too. But you don't use it for that when I need $200,000 to balance the budget. I use a school deferral for that. You don't use it to the tune of $6 million in 1 year to fund your budget. And that's what happened here. And that's why we wouldn't be able to qualify for this transitional aid, because they look at that and say, you guys are crazy using that kind of money in 1 year. You should have never done it.
Just to follow up, Deputy Mayor Check, I said that the reckless part of this was the amount. Lots of towns throughout New Jersey defer their school taxes much smaller increments. Because once you reach that 50% threshold, and the deferral is permanent, so that's why the number is cumulative. It carries over every year. Once you reach that 50%, you're done. And the money that you deferred the prior year becomes a hole that you have to make up for. So when Medford Township deferred $6 million for a couple of years in a row, we then used up our 50%, so that in last year, I think it was about $1 million that we had left. That was all that we could generate in deferred school taxes. So we went from $6 million to $1 million, which left a $5 million hole that we had to plug with other revenues, which we were able to do for the most part. But this year, we plugged that $5 million with other one-time revenues. And this year, we don't have the one-time revenues. So we're left with that hole that we need to plug, and we don't have the deferred school taxes. We don't have other one-time revenues, and that's why we're in this situation, because of those deferred school taxes.
And again, the deferred school taxes, I'm done with.
If you're inclined to write those state legislature, I'm just going to throw this out, you may have heard me. We would still have to make severe cuts and reductions, but our budget gap would have been closed if I didn't have to deal with the reserve for uncollected taxes this year. This municipality under New Jersey law has to collect, so there's a series of things I want to say that maybe you can convince our legislature to change. One, the municipality collects the taxes on behalf of all the taxing entities. We get no credit for that from the school or the county, although we're doing their job by collecting it and dispersing it to them. So that's one. Two, if you appeal your taxes after you've paid your dollars and we lose the taxes, the municipality is not only paying the 11 cents back, we're paying the school's portion back and the county's portion back. We do get a credit on the counties the next following year. That doesn't help me in this year. The school is made whole. If the reserve for uncollected taxes, we have to budget for those who don't pay the taxes. We have to pay the school and the county and make them whole. If we didn't have to account for that 70, just the school's part, because again, the county will get credit, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but 71 cents, the gap would have been closed. But because we have to make them whole, I had to recommend laying off police, things like that. So they're being whole, and we're taking the hit in your local purpose budget, which is the budget that provides you with the most direct services as a community. That, after 15 years, is what I'm fed up with and frustrated with. Is that if you want my budget to stand alone, or our budget to stand alone, then the system needs to change. Let us manage our budget and the rules and statutes we're governed by. Let the school manage theirs and account for 100% of their taxes. And let the county account for 100% of what they're responsible. So if you're inclined to follow that direction of contacting your legislature, I would ask that, I've made those comments. In fact, the mayor knows at the transitional aid meeting, there was an assemblyman from North Jersey with the town. And quite frankly, I got fed up of hearing we did this and we did that. You know what? You're not helping me. Sorry, I'm not going to hear it. As far as some of these quick things here, while we haven't looked while we're looking at some revenues more traditional right now, kind of, out of the box kind of things that I thought money into our budget, it's going to take time. It's just going to take time, whether, Chaz, you've met with me on some ideas. It's just that's going to take time to try to bring some revenues in. Privatizing trash. The big email I've gotten since the preliminary budget went out is the trash service, to be honest. That's the biggest issue people have come back at. And some have made very good ideas. Unfortunately, the gap is so big, and the problem has been compounded. Privatizing internally, changing routes for efficiency is not going to make up that budget hole. We would see some savings, but not to the extent that we need to reset, or as the deputy mayor talked about, setting a new baseline. This is the year, it was projected last summer when I spoke to everybody, this was going to be the year that Medford's got to make a decision which way it's going and where that new baseline is going to be to get out of this. Once we get out of that, we can look at refinancing, but there are rules to that and how much we can. If council wanted to bring in a financial expert to look at our structure, look at the debt, and see if that can be strengthened. That is a possibility. Salary and wage compared to other municipalities, I would have to see the contracts in general to see what else is in those contracts to get an apples-to-apples comparison. Yes, we could be lower in line with the salary side, but we may have other things within our structure that could elevate the compensation package, so to speak.
And again, that has to be an apples-to-apples comparison. I would say that the average salary of a police officer in Philadelphia who isn't driving a heated or air-conditioned car and is walking a beat makes less than the guy in Medford. Now, certainly, his expenses may very well be less based on where he lives. It's just not an apples-to-apples comparison. Medford and Evesham, Medford and Mount Laurel. Mount Laurel's got more ratables than any other municipality in the entire country. So we just can't make that comparison.
Paid fire was volunteer. I don't know what happened here 10 years ago when the community decided to go with paid fire. I don't. I'm not going back. In my opinion, that's a decision the community has to make on paid fire. I can tell you the fire last year made concessions to work with us in the budget, and they're negotiating right now. And there are lots of structural changes that we've looked at to not only, if going forward, not only slow down, so to speak, but to structure long-term stability in the contract. And I'm not going to, again, I can get into the middle of the politics of the volunteer versus paid. I've been here, I go to day calls when I can, not necessarily as, we had that car through the window last week. There were no volunteers there. If they're going to show up, they need to show up at every call and not play we don't like the paid or this or that. They have to make a commitment to run the 1 o'clock in the morning wires call or the 1 o'clock in the afternoon wire. Not just come out when there's a fire. And I've been a volunteer for a long time, so I get that side of it. But I'm not ready to say the volunteers are going to show up with under OSHA. You're going to have 4. You have to have 4 under OSHA, especially on a structure fire, to do interior attack. Okay, so there is a law regulation that requires a minimum number on that engine to do certain things to happen. But again, it's not something off the table that we just ruled it out. But that's why I haven't gone completely there yet. I think that's a community decision along with council on how it wants to have certain protection on the fire side. Furloughs, I'm against furloughs because it's a deferral. It is what it is. Once you go there, if you can't bring the revenue back up, that's the service level going forward. My style is to just go for the cut, take care of it, and move forward. A lot of towns got into trouble with furloughs over the last few years when they were going through similar stuff in Medford, but not to the extent Medford. But once you kind of go that furlough path, it is very hard to bring back that if you can't structurally change the revenue side. So I've looked at it, I've talked about it. My attitude is just again,